Hello there. I'm Skeeter the Bad Habit Rabbit. Welcome back to another edition of Interview Reviews, where we take some of the previous interviews and some of the previous footage, some of the previous things done, and we go back through them and we reevaluate them and talk and explain some of the things that went on in there. Today's a little special, but I forgot something. Let's get the ball rolling. What's up, y'all? It's me, OG Skeeter Rabbit, and I'm back again. Some of you think probably I love doing this, and you're right. I love talking to all the people out there that are interested in learning and having an education in the background and the history and the worldwide phenomena of locking. Well, I got special guests, and a few years back, I was invited to come to Brazil, to go to Brazil, and I personally met several people that I talked to on the internet, but I hadn't really gotten to see. One of them that I did know because I had judged him in many contests. I watched his development down through the years, and he's a really, 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 really multi-talented dancer. I believe does his own podcast, his own radio show. He puts out his own music. He's diverse in so many different ways. But what I really dug about him is he's real. And he's so loyal to the Brazilian culture, and he's integrated the Brazilian culture with the African-American culture of street dance. I want to show you a little something about when I was actually in Brazil. Aha. Now. I was there back in 2013. I met some of the most remarkable, talented people. And I talked to them a lot about their rich culture in street dance and how I thought it relegated to what was being done in the States. Remarkable time there. And I'm going to bring this guy up right now. I'm gonna bring up Frank Ajara, awesome cat.
Hey,
Frank, what's up, Frank?
And thank you for the introduction. That was nice.
Man, it's so nice to talk to real people. You know, Frank, I'm very passionate about dance and about how the culture of where dance comes from has affected the world. and you and I have talked about that before. I'd like for you to tell people a little bit about the scene and the rich dance culture in Brazil.
Before, I just need to remind you that we met first in 2009 in France. I would never forget that day because I went to the competition with the many French people. I was there by myself, alone, and nobody was cheering for me. Nobody was like giving me support. I was really alone, and I was really happy when I make it to the battles, and it was really nice. I was really happy with the results. So it was remarkable for me. And then I met you again in 2013. Was special. So about Brazil, yeah, but we have a long before, even before the the break dance era and hip hop culture came to Brazil. We have a really huge scene of the funk and soul here in Brazil, and at 70, many clubs playing black music, and people always since the 70s like doing the James Brown steps and learning and how to dance and soul and funk since the 70s. Yeah, my mom was part of that in a way because she actually I born in a small city far from the capital, São Paulo. Uh, I born in a small city called it Andradina, really
Andradina.
small, Andradina. And this city, we don't have clubs playing black music. But my mom, she was working in the music store, and she buy
Wow.
many vinyls, and she have many black music on her collection, like
Wow.
James Brown, Aretha Franklin, everything. And she loved everything. She even have Kraftwerk, electronic German music. So she was really into music and to dance. She was my first teacher.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was kid. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I just realized that when I was with her, dancing was the good time that we have together. Then I start to trying to learn to stay with her more time. Understand that?
Wow, Frank. You know what's amazing about it? Every time I talk to you, and there's a spirit there in Brazil that's the same. You know, your story is a lot like mine. My mom was my first teacher.
Mm, yeah,
In my house was music all the time. Before I went to
yeah,
school, when I came home from school, sometimes my mom would be dancing in the kitchen when she was cooking.
yeah. It's like
So
my mom. Yeah. Actually, I didn't play with the kids. I prefer all the time stay with her, her music, and then some steps with her because it was fun. And
it,
then she left because she was single after my father leave her, and then she
wow.
moves to try to because she was young and she was trying to make something to make a better life, and she leave my city and I stay with my grandma. So but then when it's exactly around 83, 84, when this hip hop culture and all the dances came to Brazil, and then I was already dancing and it was easy to me to go through the breaking, popping, and lock.
It
Was
was inside of you. Even from way back in reading about Brazilian culture and history and samba and all of that, the rhythm of the drum, the rhythm of the African drum had so much
yeah,
involvement in that history that I
yeah.
could almost feel it when I touched soil in Brazil. I could almost feel
I
the
have
rhythm.
a really related. We have in samba. A man call it when a man dance samba, they call mestre sala.
Wow.
It is a style. When you see mestre sala, looks like a lot. for the social dances from the 70s in the United States have many steps and footworks that looks like.
Later on in the show, we're going to go over some of the cultural stuff and cultural dances that Brazil has been involved with for centuries now. Now back to the interview.
It's like it's a heritage that we can see that come from Africa.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think that that's part of the cultural background, because the cultural background in the states coming out of the civil rights era and the struggle for equality, and the drum again was the message, and it brought so much in the gestures of locking, and some of the other dances, the soul dances, and in the music. When you listen to James Brown sing those lyrics, Frank, it was so passionate about the message and the same struggle for equality, and through dance and through music in Brazil, I find a connection to. So tell
Yeah,
me,
we have some our community, the black community, have our struggle here and still have struggle here, but especially in the 30s and 40s, like when the capoeira is a fighting, is a music, is a dance, is a culture. They have laws prohibited capoeira in Brazil. You understand how far the white people went. So we have our freedom. Then
yes,
they start to with these laws that it was prohibited to practicing capoeira in Brazil. I think that many years, I think around 60s or 70s, that they broke this law was gone, but was a long time. That
many
that,
people
that ju-
many people don't understand. And we talk about, you said something the last time we talked. You text something. You said people don't respect truth anymore,
yeah,
and they don't want to hear about what created even what they like to do as a dance.
yeah, especially when the truth hurts is when they don't like
Yeah,
to hear
yeah.
about it.
And I think they think sometimes, Frank, when people like you and I say white or white people, we mean friends of ours that are white. And that's not what we mean. We mean a system
Yeah,
from
yeah.
history that has controlled and changed. And we just try to tell them about that history. So, Frank, when did you first start to meet some of the OGs? You told them about when you first met me. When did you first start to meet Greg and other ones that were
Oh,
OGs?
actually, let me tell you something. I saw you in 2004. Yeah, at the B-Boy Summit. You was with the Don Campbell at the
Yes,
panel. There was
yes.
a panel. It was with him.
Let me quickly tell you something about that B-Boy Summit. I had a year before began to research the young internet and found out so many things on the young internet that wasn't actually true. And the confusion of my name, Skeeter Rabbit, uh, came up the year before. I had actually said to myself, if I'm ever on stage to be able to tell the real story, I'll bring the people the real story from the streets. At that event, Don Campbell spontaneously took me up on stage. And that's where Frank, Rob One, many of the people around the world first saw me and first realized that there was a Skeeter Rabbit in the history that was before the Skeeter Rabbit from the EBs. So let's continue on with this interview. Tell it, Frank.
That actually, what this was the first time that I saw you, and I took classes with Don and Fluky. But first time that I met OG from Locking was in 2003. In France, I won a blocking competition. Me and my partner Jeff was a duo, and Greg was judging. Was
Ah,
Greggy, Gemini, and Sugar Pop. And we
ah,
won this battle in 2003. It was the first time that I met a pioneer, and it was crazy because he came to me and said, "How you know locking? Where you learn from? How do you know this much?" Because is nobody knew what happens in Brazil. It was the first time, 2003.
wow. That's remarkable. And you're right. You're absolutely right. At that event at the B-Boy Summit was a strange story. Don was around the cipher, and I hadn't seen Don in some years. I came there with Greg, and I went up on.
Greg just at the end he went to the stage to talk a little bit. Uh,
Well, here's you're right. The
I
story,
remember.
the story is when I saw Don and I tapped Don on the shoulder, he said, "This is the real Skeeter. This is the real Skeeter. Come on, Skeeter, you're gonna go up on stage with me." And he grabbed me by the arm and he took me on stage. And you know that panel had a lot of people, even so the Electric Boogaloos, Tony
Yeah,
Vogel.
we have many issues that time.
Yes, a lot of issues.
Tell you, like, we have the Skeeter name with the Skeeter Rabbit from Electric Boogaloo's and you.
Yes,
We have the Bay Area in Electric Boogaloo's, and we
yes,
have the hip hop freestyle from Buddha Stretch and Elite First, and the B boys that is and the b-boys that were represented by Mr. Wiggles, because they have a kind of beef too. As the second generation from hip hop, and b-boys was the first generation from hip hop. So at that panel, we have many issues happen. I
yes.
remember that. Say,
Yeah.
wow,
I'm
and
so I'm so
even
glad.
and I even have opportunity to see Greg trying give apologize to Don on the
Yes.
microphone.
When I was sitting next to Don on that panel, I looked down the panel and I leaned over to Don. I said, Don, it's a shame that Greg is not up here with us. We are original lockers and we don't have our full brotherhood up here with us. Don looked at me and said, Skeeter, where's Greg? Where's Greg? I said, he's out there. And that's when Don got up and invited Greg to come up on the stage.
That was really nice. That's
And they
really nice.
hugged. I thought we were going to be able to stop some of the locking issues at that time. I thought, you don't know this, Frank, but after that event, I invited them all to go have dinner with me. And we all went and we had a meeting. I have the picture somewhere, but I'm so busy talking to you, I don't want to even try to bring it up now. But we talked, and we talked about coming together. But a lot of people did not want us to come together. So after we finished talking, people got in each other's ear and started to break up what we tried to put together. And for decades afterwards, you saw the same confusion. Now, I'm glad you started to talk, because I had a conversation and we talked about how people divided into camps and how Don had one philosophy and Greg had one philosophy, and people started to pick sides. You saw that too, didn't you?
Yeah, I feel that. I was far from this because I'm in Brazil and we don't have many contact with the pioneers. I think it's more easy if I was living in Europe or even in Asia, because the pioneers, they travel more to those places. Even that I brought Greg in Brazil in 2007. I think I told you.
Yeah.
2007, I brought Greg Camplack Jr. here, and I saw that. I saw that people were picking sides, and it's a kind of different philosophies. But what I was trying, and I said to myself in 2004 when I did down classes, then I did Fluky Luke, and then years after I have contact with Shabadu, and I say I need to just pick the best for each one, the best advice, the best, or even the story. I need take those stories and see what makes sense to have a timeline. to understand
Yes.
the timeline. Because even if people say different uh, visions of of something, we can see what is the timeline that connected this with that, because
And-
it's history.
yeah, and you know what, Frank, I begin to realize that also when a person tells their story, it comes from what they saw when they saw it. And so the different stories had different time frames in it. That didn't mean they were always wrong. What it told was that Greg and Shab were in parts of the entertainment part of locking, but not every dancer was in that entertainment, that professional entertainers. Some of them were very, very good street dancers, and they
Mhm,
had a story too.
mhm, mhm.
So when people want to say, well, what is locking? It is the combination, like you said, of all of it. The social party aspect of it, the nightclubs, the party, the history. Then it was the performance part of it, where people actually got on stage and did what they did.
Yeah, I remember that you said something, you wrote something about that. It's really, really sad that we don't have footage from the 1770s that we can see all the aspect of the locking, because we just have the TV shows of locking. We don't have
Yes.
the clubs or street, all the footage that we have.
A special feature at the end of this interview where I'm going to go through the three phases of locking with those of you that are interested in understanding how things develop.
From 70s, or is a little bit at Soul Train or some TV shows that the Lockers was performing. So that's don't give us a full aspect of the dance. That's why people start to confuse.
But
Yeah.
we're right
So,
back at it, and this is a real interesting interview
so I
because
just, I just, you, I saw what you wrote here about the different ways to teach that
yeah,
each pioneer. But I have to say first that when these dances like locking, popping, and breaking came to Brazil was through movies and some video clips from some artists. I think that Lionel Richie, All Night Long, and then from the East Coast we have some b boys like Malcolm McLaren, Buffalo Girls, that we have Rocksteady dancing. So that was the first introduction. Then we have the movies Breaking and Beat Street. So you see, Beat Street is more New York, and Breaking is more LA, is more West Coast. So
yes.
then we see more popping and locking. And the first inspiration for the Brazilian people to learn to was imitate what Shabadu was doing. Actually, we didn't know the names because those movies don't have time to teach us like about what was the name. Here in Brazil, for many, many years, we believed that everything was breakdance. Popping, breakdance. Locking, breakdance. B-boying, bigger, breakdance. Whatever was breakdance for years.
Now remember, this is how a lot of terminology got out of whack because the movies and the videos were titled different things that were not the real words and names and terms used. I even remember Cedric the Entertainer, the great comedian, on stage doing his comedy set. He said that he was in a club with a lot of breakdancers and he started popping. The confusion took place in there. Thanks, Frank, for clarifying that.
We just believed that everything was breaking because was what the people was talking, breakdance.
Absolutely.
Years, many years after that, we start to learning about the different styles, different areas, the real names of those dancings. So when we started, we really was doing ozone dance because it's the name of the character. It's the way that ozone was dancing because we don't have another people doing that.
And
It
Frank,
was
Do you know when Fred Berry was doing the show What's Happening?
I know.
People
Yeah,
start calling locking the rerun dance because that's all they saw.
yeah, yeah.
That's all they
I
knew.
I have a nice story about rerun. I did a show in Washington. I have a solo piece that I will send the link for you watching. It's a 20 minutes piece, and I did in Washington. And Storm opened it, and I
Yeah.
did my solo. I opened it, and Storm did his show after. Then we have a conversation with the crowd. And you know that in Washington, we have a huge black community. I think that 90% of the theater was the black community watching us. And we started to talk about the styles and show some difference. And I show a bit of locking, and Storm show a little bit of breaking. So, and we start to talk about locking, about the history. And I said, Mr. Penguin, and nobody say nothing.
They didn't
And
know who
Storm
it
say,
was.
yeah, but when Storm say, Mr. Penguin, aka rerun, everybody on the crowd stand up and start to clapping. I remember that. See, I don't remember. I don't know the name this, but I just feeling that time. Everybody on the theater stand up and start to clapping because it was the rerun.
That's how they knew him. That's where they knew
Yeah,
him
it was
from.
amazing. It was amazing time when that happens. And wow,
And see,
everybody
explaining it to
knows him.
some of the OGs that didn't get famous, some of the real street OGs, they didn't quite understand that the exposure came through that the movie scenes of the Breaking Electric Boogaloo movie. And when I
Yeah.
talked to Shabadoo about it, I said, Shab, I says, why they didn't know the real story? Because the story in the Breaking movie was really the story about Tony Basil and Don Campbell. That was the storyline about how Tony
Oh,
Basil came, how
Dan,
Tony, yeah,
I never thought about it.
yeah.
It's true.
It's true.
It's
Tony
crazy.
Basil came in and seen the street style of dance. She got
Oh
involved with a
my.
relationship with Don
Yeah,
Campbell.
but I never did the connection.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of people were angry. And they were angry at Shab, but it wasn't Shab's fault. Shabs told me, he says, I told the producers about the story. But they
Wow.
told me making movies was about making me the star of the movie, and they weren't interested in Don Campbell. I says, well, now we need to go back and tell the historic story. And that's how I got started, Frank, in telling how these inspirations got going.
So just going a little bit further, then in 90s, I think after in 85, all this breakdance fashion was gone. So everybody stops dance. Not me. I stayed dancing 85, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever I was doing, breaking, popping, and locking. And I just fall in love with those dances. So I still dance in my small city, just me and my one friend, just two people. That people were saying that I was crazy because I was still dancing something that was not on TV shows. Nobody was talking anymore. So in 91, I moved to São Paulo. That's the big city, is a capital.
Mm-hmm.
Then there I met more dancers, more survivors of the breakdance era. You know, that people was still dancing. Then I start to go some parties, and I start to learn about the city. And São Paulo have a huge black community. They have a history since the 70s with the clubs, and James Brown came to Brazil to do shows. So we have a huge and São Paulo have a huge history about the soul and funk, more than
Yeah.
my city. Of course, my is a small city. I just learned with my mom. But then in 90, I think that around 95, just you see how far was from when I started. I think it was 95 or 96 that we have a 25th anniversary of Soul Train. And they
Wow.
did a special, and they showed the lockers and
Yeah.
electric boogaloos, a small clip, and was the first time that I saw the lockers. Just I think that 93 or 92, then I realized the name of the dance, locking. And it was a
Wow.
Japanese video. They was dancing. They wrote the name of the dance, and then I start to understand that break dance maybe was something wrong.
It was
Is
different.
is wrong name,
Yes.
but I don't have I don't have I was not sure yet.
Did
But
you
but when I saw the lockers, the first thing that I make connection was when I saw Shabadu. I say, hey, it's
that's him.
ozone. It's ozone. Yeah. I say, what? Who they are? Then I start to go through books and the internet. I remember that I found something wrote on the internet, some Japanese uh, website, and then I start to learn about Don Campbell, about the lockers, and I start to find more footage. So I think the year was '99.
Right.
The year that everything changed here in Brazil, because in '96 also the Ghetto Regional Dance Company came to Brazil. I don't know if you know about them.
No.
Ghetto Regional is a dance company that was Mr. Wiggles, Pop Master
Oh,
Fable,
now I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Ken Swift, uh, many dancers
A
was
lot of
part of.
the East Coast, that East Coast real scene.
Yeah, Adesola, that was a locker too. He's a part of. They came to Brazil in '96. When I saw that show, that changed my life because I saw the way that I would like to do the dance
That
as
it
a
was different
professional.
from the way that you had learned it from just seeing it. And you know
Yeah,
what? Even here in the U.S., when locking first took off in the early '70s, and there was an original scene that I was part of, the original dancers, even before Shabadoo came on the scene. When people begin to see it, they start trying to do what they thought it was. And they never really found out, even when you go into the Orange County scene, the Valley scene, they were trying to do it, but they didn't know. And what you're talking about in Brazil is you guys didn't know you had seen it. And finally, the history is caught up. And that's where I tried to teach was the history before the Lockers even got together. How
yeah.
did it get together?
We,
How
we,
did
we, we, we need to realize that in '96 I didn't speak English, nothing. And I remember that right after the Ghetto Region came to Brazil, the Ghetto Region was really important because first of all they start to talk that breakdance was the wrong name. So they talked with us about that after the show. Then magazine, Rap Page magazine, they have a special edition just about dance. I remember that Ken Swift was on the cover. And inside this magazine, we have interview with Don Campbell, Tony Basil, Boogaloo Sam, Popping Pete, Booty Stretch. All these people was talking about the history of those, all that dance, all the different styles.
Now, pay very close attention to what was being talked about there. He was explaining the people that were out on the road, on the tours in the various countries that had access at that particular time, that were able to talk about the histories as they saw them. But that was the only access, again, that the international world had until the internet exposed other people that had other sides to the story about how these dances developed. Thanks again, Frank, for bringing that out.
And I start to translate that. Remember, we don't have Google Translate. I was
Yeah.
translate with the take
Pencil.
notes. Yeah, yeah, with a small dictionary and trying to translate. And this was '97, '98, and I was translating all that, and I was starting to be confused. Like, I'm right. This the breakdance is actually three different styles, but I don't talk for anybody about that. I just keep to myself because I was not right about it.
Right.
In '99, you need to see that the Crazy Legs, right?
Yeah, I know Crazy Legs.
Crazy Legs was I have the importance role and the changing of Brazil. He came to Brazil, right? He was presenting at some club, and my friend, a girl that was my student, we danced together. She actually now is part of my dance company. She's up to the stage. She started dancing. She was dancing a little bit of locking,
Mhm.
and everybody on the crowd started to say, "Big girl in the house, big girl in the house." Say that like she was a big
B
girl.
girl, yeah,
Yeah,
she
but
wasn't.
Crazy Legs took the microphone. No, she's not a big girl. She's a locker.
Yes.
When he said that, I say, "Wow, I'm right."
Ah, now understand another thing that Brother Frank brought out in there. That the term locker was used for people that profess the dance of locking. It was not simply used for members of the group. Members of the group were called members of the group, the lockers. Lockers was a generic term that had been used since the early 70s to denote what type of dance was being done by that individual. Painters paint, singers sing, and lockers lock.
Everything that I'm reading on that magazine is right.
Yes,
She's a locker. What I
yeah.
do is locking and popping. Breaking is a b-boying or bigger.
East Coast,
So
West Coast.
yeah, and everything started to make sense to me. Then I create my dance company called Discípulos do Ritmo, Disciples of Rhythm.
Yes,
And since our beginning, we start to use breaking, popping, and locking. We don't use break dance or something. We wrote breaking, popping, and
popping and
locking,
locking.
and
Yeah,
everything changed. Many people from the old school era, like I'm old school in Brazil too, but many other old school, they came to me say, "Are you crazy? Then this is why are you doing that? This is not the story. The name is break dance." No, it's not break dance, man. It's locking, popping, and breaking. It's
yes.
three different styles. Then everything started to change in Brazil. The events started using breaking, popping, and locking. People start to learn about the different styles, the foundations, the names of steps, the names of the creators, and then everything started to to get better in Brazil.
You started to enlighten them and to teach and to bring education into the dance scene, which is a powerful, powerful thing, Frank. And that's
Yeah.
why when we talked and we went back into the locking history, I started to explain to the students, and when I came out, that there was the social party dance, that we partied together, and there were parts of locking that was in the social party dance. And that's how Don created locking, from trying to do social party dancing with a partner and adding his bits into it. And then it was the performance. Then what you saw was what the lockers did, because people like the Go-Go Brothers with Tony Go-Go, Buddy Go-Go, myself, the Tuda Ruda sisters, we all came together and watched, and we started putting shows together. Greg left our group, Creative Generation, and went and helped the Lockers put shows together.
Mhm.
So now there's performances. And then came the battle, when they started allowing locking to do the East Coast style of confront and challenge in a battle.
Mhm. Yeah.
But there's a history back in the social party of cutting each other up, because everybody in the party danced to get recognition. And on stage, we used to do what was called taking a page out of a person's book. Everybody that performs wants to have the best solo. So we
Yeah.
were competing on stage too.
Yeah, we can see that on the even on the lockers. Each
Yeah.
solo, you see, they are competing each other.
Yes.
They need they have the best solo.
Yes.
You can see that.
Yeah.
Even the story that I heard, I know that I don't know that's true, but at the beginning, that when everybody start to copy Don Campbell at the beginning, when he start to do many different things like put the knee drops and splits and Superman, to do something different that people are doing our trying to imitate him. Then he say, for me, start keep going to the competitions and make some money on that competition. I needed to go another level. Then he
Yeah.
start to bring more elements to the locking. I think everybody start to bring more elements to the
Into it.
locking.
You're exactly right. And what would take place with Don is he had influence because James Brown was doing splits. James Brown did some knee drops. So Don would just do them with his flavor, with his style. People were shaking hands on the street, like in the civil rights era, the thumb grip handshake. People were pointing at each other.
The juggling with the hat and with the.
I taught Don that.
Tension.
I taught Don how to spin a hat in
that's nice.
Yeah, in the Carnegie Hall, New York. Don asked me to teach him how to spin a hat. And I taught him, and he just took it to another level. I spun it with one hand. He would spin it with two hands back and forth. And he got very good at it. So that's another point. There were some things, everybody copied Don's style. And I talk about this, Frank. What Don created, Don did not create locking, all of locking. Don created a style. And people built on the style until they had enough to have an art form. So Don had to be taught some things.
That's what I taught. I said to people, if nobody was trying to imitate in the beginning, Don, maybe that dance will die with Don.
Yes.
Just became locking because the community embraced. The community started to dance that style and develop something. That's why we still have dance locking until today.
Yes.
That's right. That's the reason.
But there's between 1970 and 1971, it went from Don being able to do his creative solo, whatever he wanted to do, to people needing to do unison together so that we could put an act together. So the unison became with the stop and go, the Skeeter Rabbit, the Witcher Ways, doing knee drops in unison. All of that came into play. Greg and the Creative Generation developed a lot of the unison with Scooby-Doo and the Tudaluda Sisters and all of us in Watts Writers Workshop. When Greg took that to the lockers, he had to teach Don and Slim how to do the stop and go.
Yeah. When people ask me what was the first locking group, say Creative Generation?
Yes.
They came first. The lockers came after.
Yes.
You say, oh, with people that was professional level and do some more shows. Yeah, the locker was the professional level. But first locking group was the Creative Generation.
Right. And it included the Go-Go Brothers in Creative Generation.
Around the What's Right or workshop, right?
Exactly. And Greg was part of that. That's how come Greg knew how to set up structure. Now, for all of you that have never seen the video where Greg tells that story, I say look it up on YouTube, and periodically I replay it in the Locker Legends group because Greg himself tells the story of how the unison parts of locking started to come into existence. And you're absolutely right. Stay tuned for the end of this broadcast because I'm going to break down some things and there's going to be a few surprises for you. That's why Greg's classes were structured and he taught steps and he taught choreography. Don never taught that because that was not what Don did. Don did solos. Don was a dynamic solo dancer.
Yeah,
and then
freestyle.
And then came people that caused problems. They says, well, Greg wants to be known as the creator. No, Greg didn't. They said, Don wants the structure, don't want any structure. No, it didn't. So it created a wedge between the styles of Greg and Don, and it created controversy in the locking community. So when I brought Greg up on stage at that event, I was trying to bridge that gap. But here's something that we talked about too, Frank. You and I noticed that locking is losing more and more of its structures at the battle. And I think it's because of what we're talking about now. You watch some of the battles and you can't even, it's like, is it locking? What makes things locking and what makes it not locking? Because there are people that are doing all kind of crazy things now, but they have no locking flavor.
Yeah, actually, I am. I have to say that I'm really happy with the new generation of locking in Brazil. I am
Good.
really happy with the kids, with the people that start like around 5 years until now. But I am a little bit I'm fear. Yeah, that's the right is the right to say. I'm fear the people in Brazil start to see those battles in Europe, around the world, in Asia, and start to think that that is right. They start to copying that way.
And
That's
we
what
see
I'm
that a lot
fear.
of people are doing that because they don't understand that locking and real street dance was built from the soul and spirit of the street, not by who says you're win or lose.
Yeah, but the competition they dictate the rules now. It's like the people who won start to make difference at our scene. I know how.
Very, very, very good point. You started to see the politics of locking take place because if you can make a winner, if you can create a winner, if you can get a winner from your school or your style, then everyone wants to take that person's class. And you can dictate what locking is. And that's why the politics became powerful when promoters start holding workshops and workshops start getting teachers to teach what they wanted to teach. And then those teachers became judges. It set up a criteria that changed the legitimacy of locking and the realness of locking.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah, we
And
talked
I
about
think
that.
that's why I think that that's the reason that a judge need to be really
Not connected.
responsible.
Yeah,
Yeah, and responsible when you're when you're that on that position, because you are give example for the some new generation that you're gonna watch in that battle and see who won. And if that people won, people start to think that's the right way because you won.
absolutely. I teach it exactly that way. And I think when people talk about the politics of the dance, some people think politics mean a beef, like we
Uh-huh.
don't get along. But politics does not mean a beef. It means putting in position for you to have control.
Yeah.
So if you're a person that has a lot of money, I'll tell you that you're the best dancer because I know you're going to take a lot of money and put into my event. And people begin to realize, Frank, that they can control the dance by doing exactly what you said. If they got a judge that they always brought to their event that would always pick their style of winner and not that would set the
and,
standards for what it was.
and also we have a kind of, I don't know, it's a kind of beef, but between the countries. Like I remember that in 2003, if Greg wasn't there, Greg and Sugar Pop wasn't that judge, I'm sure that I won't win that battle in France.
No,
You know what I
it's
mean?
it's just like the Olympics. That's why they had to throw out the high score and throw out the low score because countries was only voting for their athletes.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Like I am sure, and all battles that I trying after was really bad for me because the judge was biased. Is the right name?
yeah, yeah,
They have
bias.
so was European judging Europeans, and I know because even here this happens. Even here in
Yes,
Brazil, we have people from some city that support more that city. When you have people for out for the north of Brazil, because Brazil is huge, it's big. When you have dancers from another state, it's really hard to them to go through the finals or something like that. This is something that we need to talk about, that the responsibility of the people that was judging to see the dance was the more important than what the
the
where this guy
integrity of the
came from.
dance. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that you and I talked about this a while back. You know, when people start forming organizations, and they started forming organizations where their dancers in their organization and their support was only selecting dancers from their organization and support. And everyone had to dance their style. Some of those organizations started to go to other countries and started to promote their organization in other countries. And they stopped giving respect to just the dance. It became what I saw in the early locking. a business where they didn't care about the dance. They only cared about dominating an industry.
And we need to talk and I think we need to talk straight with the people and put all the issues that we have, because the locking is the more important. The
I
dance
think
is
you're
more
absolutely
important.
right. I always talk about preserving the culture, just
Mhm.
as you preserved the history of capoeira and explaining it, that it has a deeper history than what people think. I think that type of education needs to continue, and that's why I continue to talk about the history and the background, the civil rights era, the issues that took place, how people were forced in their culture, so that people understand that it's bigger than individual people. It's bigger than just the lockers, the Don Kemp. It's this about the dance, like you said, because when people don't respect the dance, then they begin to follow people.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's some problems that we have for a long time in community. I see many problems. It would be easy if we just sit down and talk. Maybe some people are doing something right or wrong and even don't know that or something, because the human beings have egos. We have
Yes.
ours. Maybe we think that we're doing something right, but somebody needs to talk with us about it. Only have a conversation to find a way to this family going to health is still healthy and still growing. We need to talk, because all those countries around the world, we have the locking spread now. And so, in my opinion, it's really difficult to have control of that, even for OGs, because like we have even small city in Brazil, we have people dancing, locking. People, I saw last week, I saw people doing some um, tutorials that trying to teach locking, and it's wrong. So I don't know how that guy learning. So I need to talk with him to about it,
So
because
you
we
so
need.
you do believe that some people will listen to truth. Some people
Yeah,
will, and some won't.
yeah, but that's we would. I didn't went to the internet to his video and say, yeah, you wrong, you can't do that. No, I would talk personally with him and explain, because even I have experience, and it's about you. You have something on that story. I think it was 2000, the year it
Hmm.
was 2000, and I make a video, instructional video of locking.
Hmm.
You see, I was really, really young, and I thought that I knew everything, because I was dancing locking until 6 years already. And I thought that I knew everything. And I did this video and teaching locking. Then I started learning more. And I have two things wrong on the video. First of all, I taught the stop and go wrong, and then I taught Skeeter, and I gave the credit for Skeeter Rabbit for the electric boogaloo's. Then I took off the videos of the
You learn.
I
You learn.
I stopped to production to distribute the video. So on that time when I saw it was wrong.
And I want to thank you for that, Frank. I want to thank you for correcting that part in history. That's been part of a thorn that's been in my side for a long time. I really appreciate dancers like that that will correct it and will adhere to the truth and not try to change things to make their agenda the most powerful. Thanks again, Frank.
I say no, I can't do that. Took the
But you're right.
video.
Some people, as an OG, and people started calling me OG
Yeah,
for
but
a
you
different
see,
reason.
yeah, but you see, when I did that, I was innocent.
Yeah,
I
you
did
didn't know.
something wrong, but I was innocent. I thought that was doing something right, but was wrong, until I saw that. I saw
But
that
you were
no,
humble. You were
yeah,
humble enough to realize there are some people that do the things wrong, not innocent. Some people do the things wrong, right, to take credit for it and to change the
yeah,
history. Those people, I think, are the people that you say You said, Skeet, some people don't want to know the truth, and they don't because they haven't been about the truth all those times. So I've got a system that I do now. This me. I used to, when I first came back on this new school scene, because I never left the old school scene. I owned a business in South Central Los Angeles since the end of the 70s. My doors was open every day, 1 block from where I was raised. So people that say I left the scene, that's not true. They left the community. I didn't leave the community. My doors were open every day. But the thing is that we have to continue to tell our stories. You have to continue to tell about Capoeira. You have to continue to tell about the history and origins from Brazil and how it merged with the histories and origins from the States and the African American community. Some are going to accept it and some are not. But to get that real funk and soul, the African had to understand the message of the drum. If he didn't understand the message of the drum, he didn't understand where to go, where to take the message, where the danger was coming or not. So you can tell the students that they can listen to the drum, but until they understand the message of the drum, they will not understand where to go. So all I try to do now, Frank, is to put out the message of the drum as I learn to speak it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they really want to know what funk and soul is, what funk and soul hit me, they will learn why it was put out, why these things took place. Because I think everyone's free to do locking style. Mm-hmm. A little kid can do a locking style of dance. He can wave his fist, he can freeze, he can point, and that's his little cute style. But not everybody can represent the cultural art form. You're studied to represent the cultural art form. You didn't study just to do the style. Mm-hmm. So I tell them, if you want to do the style, when someone shows you their style, they can show you their style. But someone teaches a class and teaches the art form, that's where it comes in wrong. So I don't go out and teach anymore, Frank. I stay home. I'm older now. Well, I don't tell you how old. I'm closer to 70 than I am to 60 now. But my idea is to preserve these cultures so that people like you that are honest and sincere.
And actually, I need to tell you, I have Greg in my heart forever. Like, I graduated my locking after Greg came here in Brazil, but after Greg, your class was really, really dope to me. When I did your class in Brazil, say, wow, this guy, he catch me on the locking class. Because although the class that I did was nice, I learned a bit of with Fluky. I learned about the history and about the how can I say the philosophy of Don Campbell was really, really, I can use that when I have many technique, so I can use that philosophy on my dance when I have my. That's why I think that in some years I start to have my personality in locking, because the Don's advice.
Yes.
And Shabadu class is really nice with the repetitions, with the lines. He's really clean. And actually, Shabadu was my first inspiration because the movies and everything. So, like I said, I start to imitate him, and I thought the dance was ozone, was his style. But when I did your class, was really, really, really nice because I saw a way to have actually. I did your class. I did Greg's class. Then I have your class. Then I did Scooby-Doo class because Scooby-Doo came to the event after yours, and was really nice to learn the steps that he created. That's special. Learn the Skeeter Rabbit with Skeeter Rabbit. Learn the Scooby-Doo with Scooby-Doo. That's something really special. People don't realize maybe that you're learning a step that guy created. Like, this is really special.
Yeah, it's locking has a long, powerful history that came out of a struggle, of the civil rights struggle. And when you emphasize that and you learn it from those people and what they felt, you emphasize it much stronger. You emphasize it with conviction. Dance is a language. Frank, when you do something like this, the samba and some of those dances, and you're grooving with a girl, You know, you're talking to her with your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's talking back. If she gets a little sexy, she's talking back with her body. Locking has the same possibilities. When I point at you and I ask for 5, when I come at you in love, when I do all of those things, the commercial world changed it to muscle man. That's the way we talked in the streets. I came at people with my hands up, you know, showing peace. I pointed at them, let them know I recognized them. That's the language. Every locker didn't understand it or learn it that way, or cannot identify it with that way. Just like you say, capoeira was outlawed because from my readings, they didn't want the slave owners to know that they were practicing a martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
So they thought it was a dance. So they let the slaves.
Yeah,
The slaves was practicing.
there was confusion. The authorities, like people, they are dancing or
What are
they
they
are
doing?
fighting. Yeah,
No, we don't want to fight because they might run over them, but they can dance. So they don't understand that locking came from that same background, the language. When I went to shake someone's hand in the street, they knew if I was about the social movement by the way I shook their hand, by how I shook their hand, by how I gripped their hand. Not everybody is aware of that cultural background. You are.
I think the one thing that I can relate with that, because when you learn the dance and the dance represent you, like locking represent me, is the self-esteem that
Yes.
locking gave me is strong. Like when you are on a circle dancing and doing your solo and everybody is watching. So that was the power that the dance gave to me. And I see that self-esteem I can relate it with in the 17 with all that struggle, and see how the locking and gave to those dancers the self-esteem to do something really good that people was watching and representing the dance. That's done something really, really strong.
That allowed some of us to get out in the streets in the middle of the gang and hustle era. Because once I became known as Skeeter Rabbit the Dancer, I could wear Ace Deuce hat, which was a gang hat.
Mm-hmm.
I could wear that. I could go anywhere in Los Angeles, and I didn't have to worry because I had a reputation. Oh, that's Skeeter Rabbit. So the self-esteem of the dance, like you said, gave you a way to be accepted into the street culture. Frank, this is awesome talk. I think you cannot say that he represented the art form of locking. I didn't see any fundamental locking in there besides a couple of pauses. And then I saw him really get into the groove of the dance and dancing. I think that's a dance contest. And if you were judging it on his funk and soul in the dance contest, he did a wonderful job. But if you say he represents the cultural style of locking, what Frank and I began talking about here was how certain things started to affect the contest and the battles. And some dancers were going into the contest thinking that it was all about total creativity and no foundation to locking. And some dancers went in and they constantly did social party dances and soul dances, but they didn't know how to infuse locking into that so that it still remained locking. And that has such a bearing on the world today, because when those people win contests, people take that as being what locking is, and they imitate it. So locking has to have some elements of locking. It has to have some elements of the social party dance, and it has to have some elements of the performance for it to be complete. How much of each is in it is where you know where a person understands their cultural background and history, and they understand what style of locking they're doing, whether they're doing social party, whether they're doing performance, or whether they're battling. And each of them have all the elements in it. So we're talking about some of the contests around the world where people have won those contests. And you look at it and you go, were they really locking? Then there has to be some cultural fundamentals that he exhibits in there to a good degree with his funk and soul. And I don't see it. I see that the problem is we've taught people so much that it is all total freedom of freestyle. And locking is not total freedom of freestyle. It is freestyle within a foundational format. And I think we have to teach that. Quick story. You know, I judged a contest a while back, and I'm sitting in the front row. Me, Sugar Pop, and Craig Judd was judging the contest. And I was sitting in the front row, and a girl came out, and she had on a pink ballet tutu, but she had scarves tied all around her arms. And she started dancing and spinning and doing all kinds of dances. And every now and then she'd stop and point at us. And then she would spin and take off the scarves and wave them around, stop and spin at us. I scratched my head, and Greg scratched his head. I looked at Sugar Pop. Sugar Pop was scratching his head too. And we looked. And at the end, we picked a very good locker that really got down. And she was angry. She was angry because Don Campbell told her that locking was total creativity and freedom and freestyle. And her style of locking was different than everybody else's. So she should have won. And I think if we don't put structure to the dance, that eventually around the world, that's what we're going to see. And that's what they're going to tell the next generation is locking. Mm-hmm. And that's dangerous because we lose the culture of locking. You can't do that with popping. You can't do that in the B-boy scene. You can't do it in whacking. Why can you change all the fundamentals out of the dance? And some people don't want the fundamentals because they want to be able to teach what they do is locking one day. So I think it's dangerous, Frank. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel the same way because I think the soul and funk is part of locking, but just funky soul is not locking.
No,
it is funky soul. So when you on the locking we started is because Don is doing those dances and he did on his way, and everything that we can feel in the body that those dances was inside the locking, but inside the structure of locking, you can see that we have the soul and funk. Yes. But if you take away all the fundamentals of the locking, just funky soul is not locking. It's funk and soul. It's a social dances. It's a social part of those era, of that era. So it's a little bit dangerous because, like I said, the battles nowadays they give reference for the new generation. People are watching more battles than the OGs. People are looking more for battles and big events, and if those footage start to be reference about what is locking, then this become a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Frank. Frank, it was awesome to be able to talk to you, Frank. It was awesome to have you on. Anytime you want to come on, Frank, let me know. And if I'm ever doing lives and you just got something to say, text me, man, and I'll send you a link and you can pop up live with me anytime. You got an open invitation.
Okay.
Anytime you want.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Frank. Hey, man, I really appreciate your talking. I appreciate your candidness. I think what you said is so valuable for not just the locking community to see, but some of the newer OGs that have come back on the scene to understand how this thing has moved and developed and how it's gone all the way across the waters to touch different people. Man, I love you much, Frank.
Okay. Thank you very much. Love you too, brother. Peace.
Peace to you, Frank. All right, y'all. Hey, first, I want to thank Frank Ijara, man. He's a pioneer and a cornerstone in Brazil. There are other dancers in Brazil. And like I said, when I went to that cultural background in Brazil to teach my culture from the States, it was remarkable to infuse the two and see how they interacted. So I want to thank you. And we want to continue on. This is Let's Talk, y'all. So grab your desk, get your pen and paper, and let's talk about some things, and let's clarify some of the things that we talked about in there. First of all, Frank and I talked about how people are now doing other things within locking, but they want to classify it as locking because they've been told that they have total freedom. Now, I played something earlier. Let me play it again for you. Now, have you ever seen a battle conducted like that, or a prelim of a battle conducted like that? No, not really. But we did it that way in France. That's the time that he's talking about that we did, that he was in France. We did it that way because so many people had misinterpreted locking that it became embarrassing in the prelims. I talked about the girl that was in the contest with the tutu on and all the scarves around it, and she thought she was locking, and I couldn't find an element of locking in there. At that contest, people were coming out in the prelims in costumes like it was Halloween. We even had a locking entertainer. We had a guy come out with a wig on, an Elvis Presley wig, and a cape and the full regalia. And what he did was flip the guitar around and stop periodically and pointed at the judge panel. And he believed he was locking. The danger of this is that when a person comes out and does that, if he wins, imagine what the next locking battle is going to be like. Imagine what they're going to wear the next locking contest and what you're going to see. So I changed that up. I had to bring the element of confront and challenge and respond. So I stood up from the judging panel and I picked the next 10 to advance. And I went out there and I made them confront me. I made them challenge me. So that in social party locking was different. That in performance locking was different. But there was an element that had to have challenge and respond in the battle. And the dancers needed to know how to do it all. So that's what I did there. But now we're going to go into something else. This show is entitled The Culture. The culture of locking, it was remarkable because it corresponds with the other culture that he talked about. Now, let me play something here. Is a dance that is a original Brazilian cultural dance. And Frank explains that as the indigenous people and the Africans practiced capoeira, they made the people that were the oppressors believe that it was just a dance. But they weren't just dancing, they were practicing their martial arts for the time of their liberation, the time that they would have to confront the oppressor, that they were still in shape and they were still ready to do battle. So how much is that connected to the cultural aspect of locking out of the 1960s, where there was cultural oppression, there was opposition to that cultural oppression, where symbols like this meant unity and people stood up, and there were the riots of the 1965s, the civil rights era of Martin Luther King. How much did that coincide? Now, let's go to another aspect of what we're talking about here. See, the history of the Brazilian culture started with the indigenous people, and then the Europeans arrived. And you don't like the word conquest, and that locking is, there's a conquest within locking, within organizations trying to establish themselves. Well, Brazil became a continent that had been conquered by Europe, by the Portuguese people of Europe. And who did the Portuguese people in Europe bring with them to work the lands of Brazil? They brought Africans. Those Africans and the indigenous people and the Europeans combined, but the African culture and the indigenous culture survived there. And that's what created what it created. Do you find similarities in the conquest through slavery in America? Do you find conquest in the African American culture? Now I want you to stop for a second, and I want you to name one African American cultural dance. Okay. Name African American cultural or folk music. Okay. Name African American cuisine. For real? Is that Southern cooking? You see, everything that was created by African Americans in the United States was transposed where people did not want the African or the Black part on it. They wanted it just to be American when they could commercialize it and sell it. So we are fighting to preserve that cultural background. Brazil had cultural dances. You can name cultural dances from Mexico. You can name cultural dances, from France, the Apache dance from France. You can name indigenous dances from the United States with the Indians when they did peace dances and war dances. You can name tribal dances from the South Pacific with Samoyeds. Brazil had its cultural dances. It had its cultural dances of samba. They had cultural dances of capoeira, we just looked at, cambia, jango, coco. All of these were cultural dances that derived from that culture and was forced through the conquest of Brazil and the mixture of people from Africa and the indigenous people. Now, let's take a look at samba. Frank describes it, and he describes it where there is meaning, where there's something that the male deals with when he's dancing with the female. Let's take a look at it. Samba, a dance where couples relate to each other in their motion. Well, what do some of the historical things say about samba? It's one of the dances that immediately comes to mind when you mention Brazilian dances. Some believe samba was derived from the word semba, which signifies a naval bump in Kimbundu, the African Bantu language, and symbolizes the invitation to dance from a man to a woman. Simba is also infinitive of kusumba, which means to pray. Is it cultural? Is it deep? Is it much more than just entertainment? You see, most people will not study that far down in and get out. All right, y'all, we've gone through the cultural part. Now, let's go through the part that I talk about the difference between social party, performance, and the battle. Frank was right here in his interviews when he talked about there was not much footage of the actual events that took place. You know why? Because it had to be professionally filmed. Individual people in poor communities did not have cameras. There was no cell phones. You could not afford an 8mm camera. You'll see some of the rich families that have family film. African-American people did not have that luxury. They could not afford that. So it's either in the commercial footage or it doesn't exist. But there was one very smart person. Fred Rerun Berry kind of chronicles how it took place in the story of what's happening, because they went back in the African-American community, and it chronicles how locking had transpired through those times. So let's go through something right now and take a look at it that is really remarkable. That is the social party. That's what it looked like every Friday and Saturday night in homes, in nightclubs. Soul Train emphasized what a social party was, and that was what was remarkable. In living rooms and backyards, this is the way people danced with each other. They shared and responded. A remarkable concept. So maybe you're not able to see the actual social party in this high school dance, but you're able to watch Soul Train. That's what the popularity was, but it was real. The cut up. How did we cut up in these social parties? Take a look. Soul Train also chronicled that in his first dance contest. This is the way when the party got good and dance couples was getting down together, and one couple needed to cut another up for recognition. There was no real money things. Now watch Jimmy Foster use locking in the cut up, and watch Benita Jo Freeman as she responds when they lead and they follow each other with locking. Look at the various dances. Look how the couples are playing off each other in the styles. You will see many steps done by dancers that are not locking that was instituted into locking. Look at Jimmy and Benita as they play off of each other. This was happening in social parties and nightclubs, high school dances, all over South Central Los Angeles. This is what was the cut. The robot. People instituted the robot inside of the dance. Pat Davis, Gary Keys, all great dancers. So if you're doing social party dancing, you need to know how to interject within the dance style like this, because this is how it all started. This is how Don Campbell started, by dancing with partners in the dance through the contest of parties. It all started in the party. This is how it all started. You the dancer out there today know how to institute this style. Can you emulate this style with a partner, with a female partner or a duo? Can you feed and lead off of him? Because this is the origin. We just looked at the social party couple and locking. As it developed, people like this and watch Fred, they developed some steps together. That's how the two Wooda sisters, the Go-Go Brothers started, and many dance couples, Freddie Maxey, got started. We developed some steps, but we also spotlighted the solo. Watch the solo be spotlighted in this. This was done in restaurants and parties and in barbecues. The dancer had the solo and he could play off of anything he wanted to. And so did she. Watch Fred give her the spotlight. Her spotlight. This happened in Maverick's Flats. It happened inside of the Summit. It happened inside of the Citadel. It happened in the clubs that you never saw, that you, the new school, never saw. But this is the way the power was inside of those places. Now, there were other people often on the dance floor, just as it was in the previous video. But this is how we got the four corners, y'all. Now look at Fred do some locking moves in the middle of the dance. The bump, y'all. Locking house party turnouts and cut. John Campbell and Fred Berry, Lenny what's happening? Are they wearing knickers? White socks, crazy hats. This is the way we dressed in the party. This is the way we dressed in the streets. This is the way that we got down in the parties when one tried to cut up the other. Whether he was able to get out together or not. Now watch Don in his solo. Then a house party. Fred in his solo. Do you see the power of how the battle became about? As that developed in the house parties, it went out into the streets. We would stop at street corners, in the cars, in restaurants like Fred's doing right now. He would mime and play around. But he was actually speaking with a language. He asked for 5. He didn't get 5. He talked with a language. This is the street element. From Don Campbell's creative style came unison. How did we get into unison? Here's the improvisation. This is the improvisation. Watch how what's happening tells the story.
Hey, fellas, let me see what you look like.
No striped socks, no knickers, no big hats. Just our street style. It's just. Watch how unison started to develop. The Go-Go Brothers started to develop steps like this. Greg and Scooby started to develop steps like this. We could actually call these steps out and do them. Don Campbell had to be taught these steps because he was told about the solo. This is how the unison started. From that unison developed what? There's the costuming. Once we started to do shows and performances. That's the early costuming that we made ourselves. That's how people learn, by watching the performance. The sneak, another step Don Campbell had to learn. You see in living rooms all over the nation, people were watching their TV and imitating. And then the look graduated to more of a performance. Now costumes were being made. There was glitter. There was cummerbunds with glitter on them. There were top hats. Because now the entertainment part of locking was developing even more. That's how locking was going from one part to the entertainment. This is the evolution from 73. Now you want to talk about battle style? This is a battle style. This is a competitive style. This is where he's showing his skills and everything that he has. You will see this style done in battle. If he was confronting somebody, this is the battle style of locking, the competitive style of locking, just like in hip-hop battles today, where it's a lot of moves. It's not as much funk and soul inside it, but it still has to have the groove of funk and soul in there someplace, doesn't it? But it's more confront and challenge. It's more of that in the battle style. So you're watching the evolution. Watch Fred. On all his movement. There's a groove and a timing. It's not just one. Here the shoulders, the hip, the head, all of that in the groove. The power move, even by a big man like Fred. Look how the battle now today is. P-Lock has a groove, the hitchhike, for a split second, then back to the locking. There's a groove in that style also. So the evolution of social party, through performance, through the battle, all have its time frame in history as it was created in the original era. I love to watch you ladies. The unison. The evolutionary phase of locking. People need to understand that and understand what it means. I hope you enjoyed that we try to educate and we try to expose people to various parts of locking. I hope that you enjoyed it so much that people out there will tell people what we try to do here. You know, there are some originals and some performers that say, Skeet, you shouldn't give away certain things. But you know, I believe the value is when you put the horse in front of the cart, not behind the cart. The value is that this is more important for people to understand and preserve than it is for me to make money, total money off of it. And I'm not opposed to making money. Don't get me wrong. I'm not opposed to being paid what locking is worth. Don't get me wrong. But somebody has to try to preserve the culture when they see that it's going down. I want people to understand a couple of things, that we do this for you. We do this for the education. There are people that pay a lot of money for me to come to other countries and teach these things. And I try to give them here to you, the people that are interested in the Locker Legends Facebook group and in the Locker Legends pages, without charging you for the education and the knowledge. So pass on the word. Let's make this thing grow. Let's make people be able to take this. I don't care what you believe. There's some good that you can take into this to whatever the styles of locking that you want to do. But learn social party, learn the performance, and learn the paddling style, and become a complete locker and learn the culture and history. I want to say a couple of other things right quick before I go, and it's not going to be a hard time. Next week, we're going to do a full preview, full premiere of Beyond Hip Hop. So all of you that have been asking, where can you see the movie? You're going to be able to see it right here. Tell your friends that you're going to be able to see the full movie of Beyond Hip Hop with myself and Ricky Carenza critiquing it throughout the movie and at the end. We'll probably let you watch the full movie without critiquing it during the movie. But we're going to be here, Ricky and I, to critique what you've seen and to answer your questions. Tell people. Let's get people in here. Let's get people interested in learning and seeing what's being produced to keep a cultural art form together. I want you also to recognize that we also have a radio show at the Locker Legends website. And at the Locker Legends website, that's www.lockerlegends.net. At that website, you can find a link to our radio show. Now, why do I have a radio show on the stream? Because I cannot play the music that is necessary to talk about its influence on Facebook. So therefore, we have the rights to the music on the radio show, and I can explain the music and how the music influenced. I also do a social conscious show there, where I talk about social conscious music and entertainers like Gil Scott-Heron, Lonnie Liston Smith, Roy Ayers, Funkadelic, groups that actually had social conscious music, groups, people like Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, Curtis Mayfield, where the music emphasized what the dance was about, because we are the rhythmic warriors of the spoken word. That's who Al Bell said we were, and that's what we represent. So I want to say peace to you all, and thanks for joining me today on the Interview Review. Join us next week with Ricky Carenza as we do the full premiere of Hip Hop, Beyond Hip Hop. Hey, love to you, OG Skeeter Rabbit. Tell people to watch this. This video is going to be running the next week. Tell people to watch it. Tell people to get the word out. Tell people to talk about it. Tell people, let's get educated before we start recreating. Educate before you recreate. This is your guy, OG Skeeter Rabbit, in Locker Legends, telling it the way it is, the way it was, and the way that it really should be. Peace to y'all, and we out.